Where are you watching this video from and what time is it? Let me know. The glow of your screen is soft against the darkness, and you might already be tucked beneath blankets searching for the kind of story that carries you away. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now the curtain of time parts and you're standing on an ancient plain. The wind slices across an open valley where grasses bend and shiver. The sun seems weaker as if its rays fall through a pale veil. Winter is not just a season here. It is the very air itself. The age of ice is beginning. Snow gathers in quiet corners of the earth, piling higher year after year. At first it seems like nothing more than a colder spell, a long winter that overstays its welcome. But the years stretch, and the cold deepens. Imagine walking across this land. The ground beneath your feet is hard as stone, frozen soil, locking seeds and roots far beneath reach. Frost curls around every surface, painting the land white, long before any artist thought to lift a brush. The glaciers are forming in distant mountains. They press downward inch by inch, rivers of ice that grind through valleys, carving shapes that one day will still be visible as fjords and cliffs. These glaciers are like slow giants, patient and unstoppable, and the world reshapes itself beneath their weight. The land that once welcomed green pastures now stiffens into a bleak, glittering kingdom, and in this landscape creatures must adapt or vanish. Mammoths stride across the open plains, their shaggy coats rippling in the wind, tusks curling like frozen crescents of ivory. Bison gather in herds so large the earth itself seems to tremble when they move. Wolves sharper and hungrier than their modern cousins trail the edges of herds waiting for weakness. Even the air smells different, cleaner, sharper, as though every breath is filtered through ice. Humans too are here, small bands scattered across the continent. They are fewer than the animals, fragile in number but persistent. They wear skins loosely wrapped around their shoulders and grip stone tools that look crude by today's eyes, but are lifelines in their own time. They huddle near flickering flames, uncertain how long the wood will last. A single spark of fire is the difference between endurance and the silence of the cold. What makes this ice age remarkable is how global its grasp is. This is no simple regional chill. Vast sheets of ice creep across North America, Europe and Asia. Seas drop lower as water freezes into glaciers, revealing land bridges where oceans once spread. It is through these very bridges, like the one across what we now call the Bering Strait, that humans will one day pass, stepping into new continents. You can almost picture them carrying children and bundles, not realizing they are making history simply by walking forward. Here is a fact to anchor in your mind. During the height of the last ice age, over 1/3 of the Earth's land surface was buried beneath ice. Picture that: an entire planet wrapped in white continents, reshaped climates unrecognizable. And here's a tidbit to smile at: some of the very first people who painted animals on cave walls also painted penguins and seals, suggesting they lived near icy coasts where these creatures waddled about. It's a strange thought that while mammoths thundered inland, a hunter somewhere else might be sketching the comical sway of a penguin on a cave wall. You can sense the tension in this beginning. The air grows colder, the skies heavier. A child coughs in the smoke of a fire. A hunter squints at the dark horizon, wondering if the herd will return. Beneath them ice thickens, and above them stars glitter, sharper in a frigid sky. And yet amid this harshness there is also a strange beauty. The night is long, but the auroras dance with green and violet ribbons shimmering across the heavens. Wolves howl, their voices echoing like mournful instruments in the frozen expanse. You might think it lonely, but there is comfort too, families pressed close together, fires, shared stories whispered into the shadows of caves. In these first moments of the Ice Age, human survival is fragile, but so is human creativity, blooming like a spark inside the frost. It is not difficult to imagine one of them looking out at the endless snow and thinking the world will always be this way. And perhaps tucked under your blanket now, you feel a small shiver at the idea, because the cold that settled over them was not a passing winter, not a decade, but tens of thousands of years. Imagine waking tomorrow and the next day and the next, and the world outside your window never warming again. That was their reality. The Age of Ice is not a quick event. It creeps, it lingers, it demands. It teaches the early humans how to respect the sky, the earth, the beasts that roam it. It tests their resilience and draws out their ingenuity. And as this vast frozen curtain descends, you are standing with them, ready to walk deeper into this ancient winter, A little joke to ease the frost: if you had a freezer during the Ice Age, you wouldn't need to plug it in. You'd just put your leftovers outside the cave and let nature handle it. And yes, some child probably tried exactly that, only to discover a wolf enjoyed their mammoth stew first. The dawn of the Ice Age is not only the story of climate and landscape, it is the opening note of a human saga, one of survival, invention and endurance. The snow crunches beneath your feet, the horizon gleams white, and the story is only beginning. The glaciers are stirring. At first they seem distant, perched upon far-off mountains, their white crowns glimmering under a muted sun. But as centuries pass like breaths of frost, these glaciers begin their slow march. They are not still statues of ice, they move, one heavy groan at a time, flowing like rivers frozen in mid-current. You can almost hear them low rumbles in the earth as stone grinds against stone. They advance with patience. Trees vanish beneath their weight, splintering and snapping as though made of twigs. Hills buckle and valleys stretch wider. Imagine walking across a land that shifts beneath you, though so slowly you would not notice in your lifetime, yet across generations the world is reshaped. A child is born in a valley with wide meadows, and her grandchildren see that same valley carved into a deep U-shaped trench by ice. And what these glaciers leave behind is not destruction alone. They sculpt beauty. They carve cliffs, fjords, and shimmering lakes that in the far future will draw travellers who marvel at the scenery, without realising it is the work of ancient ice. Even today, places like Yosemite Valley or the fjords of Norway still carry the fingerprint of those glaciers. It's like nature's slow-motion art project completed over tens of thousands of years. But for those who lived then, this was not art. It was challenge. The glaciers brought with them a creeping cold that spread far beyond their edges. Winds carried icy air into forests. Rivers froze earlier each year, and snow stayed longer on the ground. Hunting paths shifted as animals moved away from the crushing advance. For small human bands, this meant constant adjustment. Settling never felt permanent when the land itself was shifting. Here's a striking fact: at the peak of the Ice Age, glaciers reached nearly 2 miles thick in some regions. That's taller than the tallest skyscraper today, a wall of ice so massive it bowed the crust of the earth itself. And here's a tidbit that feels almost comical inside these glaciers. Scientists have found ancient air bubbles still trapped like nature's time capsules of the atmosphere. Imagine that somewhere a bubble of breath, exhaled by a woolly mammoth, could still be locked inside ice waiting to be studied. For the people beneath the cold skies, glaciers were both threat and mystery. To them, the vast white cliffs might have looked like slumbering spirits. Stories may have been told around fires of mountain gods pushing the ice forward in anger or warning. In caves, they whispered, "Stay back," for the glaciers creaked like something alive. One can almost see a child tugging at a parent's arm, asking if the ice is coming, to swallow their camp in the night. Yet the glaciers also offered unexpected gifts. As they ground stone into fine dust, they left fertile soils behind, though few would enjoy that gift until much later when farming was born. For now, the humans of this frozen world were forced to move again and again, following game and searching for land not yet claimed by the creeping white. The soundscape of such a world would be strange to modern ears. The cracking thunder of icebergs breaking the groaning of shifting glaciers, the eerie silence that followed heavy snowfall. And imagine the view, an endless gleaming wall of white stretching to the horizon, reflecting the sun so fiercely it blinded hunters who looked too long. Today we call that snow blindness, but then it must have seemed as though the gods themselves punished curious eyes. Life near the glaciers demanded cunning. Hunters tracked reindeer that grazed along the icy edges, for these animals thrived where others fled. Wolves prowled too, their howls echoing like warnings across the ice fields. At night the auroras shimmered above those vast frozen ridges, curtains of colour falling over cliffs of blue ice, a sight both terrifying and beautiful. And the humour of survival was not absent even here. Picture a young hunter slipping on the slick surface, landing hard and muttering something that probably translated to "This ground hates me." Laughter is after all one of humanity's oldest tools. Even in a world dominated by glaciers, jokes were as necessary as fire. The glaciers moved, reshaped and tested. For those living beneath their shadow, the land became both enemy and teacher. Each step forward was a reminder that the earth itself was alive, restless, and capable of swallowing entire valleys. And still the people pressed on, wrapping furs tighter, holding fires closer eyes, glancing at the glittering walls in the distance. The glaciers might move for thousands of years, but so too would the humans. Patient, clever, stubborn, they would follow the herds, adapt their tools, and whisper stories that carried the memory of the ice forward. The world was changing, slowly, inexorably, with the march of white giants across the land, and those who lived in this time did not know it as history. For them it was simply home, a home colder, harsher, and stranger than anything you or I have ever known. The land is restless, though no thunder roars above. Instead, the tremors come from the tread of beasts, immense, shaggy creatures that stride with a dignity born of centuries in the cold. They are the true monarchs of the Ice Age, adapted perfectly to a frozen earth where survival depends on fur, tusk, and claw. Across the tundra, mammoths graze in herds so large that their silhouettes stretch like rolling hills against the horizon. Each is wrapped in thick wool, a coat so dense it shrugs off snow as if it were no more than dust. Their long tusks curve downward and then sweep upward in elegant arcs, tools as much as weapons. With them, mammoths dig through crusted snow to reach hidden grasses or clash against rivals in displays of strength. Imagine standing in their shadow, the ground trembling, your breath caught in your chest. Not from fear alone, but from the awe of sharing the earth with such giants. Close behind, woolly rhinos lumber shorter but no less formidable. Their horns, long as a spear, can toss aside snowdrifts or send predators scattering. They are solitary wanderers, their footprints pressed deep into frozen ground. In their company, herds of bison, thunderheads lowered against the wind shoulders, packed with muscle that will one day fill the bellies of hunters. And then there are the predators. Saber-toothed cats crouch low in the snow, their fangs gleaming like carved ivory. Wolves larger than any alive today stalk the edge of herds, their eyes burning with hunger. In the caves, bears stir massive hulking beasts that can swipe down prey with a single paw. For humans who move cautiously across this land, danger is everywhere, not only in the chill of the air, but in the shadows that linger just beyond the firelight. Here's a fact to anchor this frozen menagerie: many Ice Age animals were far larger than their modern relatives. The woolly mammoth stood taller than today's elephants, and the short-faced bear towered over humans at more than 11 feet when reared on its hind legs. This was a time when size itself was a survival strategy. Thicker fur, bigger lungs, more strength to endure the cold. But here's a quirky tidbit preserved in Siberian ice. Scientists have found baby mammoths so intact that tufts of their hair still feel soft to the touch. One even had traces of its last meal milk from its mother still in its stomach. It's as though the cold decided to keep its secrets, holding on to these creatures like fragile treasures for tens of thousands of years. For the humans watching from a distance, these animals were both hope and terror. A single mammoth could feed an entire clan for weeks, its hide stretched into shelter, its bones shaped into tools. Yet to bring down such a beast was to gamble lives. Hunters crept forward with spears tipped in flint hearts, pounding, knowing one misstep could end in trampling hooves or goring tusks. The snow muffled their steps, the cold stung their faces, and still they pressed on because hunger was more dangerous than any mammoth. At night the sounds of the beast filled the air. Mammoths bellowed across the plains, wolves howled their long mournful cries, and in the distance the crack of antlers colliding echoed like thunder. Imagine lying in a fur-lined shelter trying to sleep, while those sounds reminded you how thin the line between hunter and hunted could be. The beasts of the frost carried their own myths too. Children were told stories by firelight of mammoths that carried the world on their backs, of wolves that guarded the gates of night, of cats whose fangs could pierce the stars. Perhaps these tales made the world less frightening, or perhaps they reminded the young that survival required both respect and cunning, and humour found its place here as well. Picture a hunter leaning too close to a mammoth track, marvelling at its size only to trip headfirst into the print and vanish from sight. Laughter rises. Even in the cold, even in hardship, humans found a way to smile at clumsy moments. If laughter warms the heart, then perhaps it was as necessary as fire itself. The animals, immense and untamed, were not just part of the landscape. They were the pulse of the Ice Age, the breath of survival, the challenge that sharpened human skill. To live among them was to step daily into a story where every chapter was written in tracks pressed deep into snow. The herds move onward, shadows against a pale horizon. Behind them, hunters follow, and with each footstep the bond between humans and beasts grows more entwined. Prey, predator and provider, all woven into the same frozen tapestry. The night is long and the cold gnaws at bones. Breath curls in pale clouds, each exhale a reminder of how thin the barrier is between life and the endless frost. In this frozen age, humans find a fragile answer to the dark fire. It begins not as a roaring blaze, but as sparks, tiny delicate stars coaxed into life by hands raw from cold. Flint strikes against flint or against iron-rich stones, sending sudden flashes. Sometimes nothing comes, only frustration and sore fingers. But when luck and skill align, a glowing ember flickers into being and all eyes lean close. Breath feeds it gently as though the ember were a newborn that might shatter if handled too roughly. A curl of smoke rises and with it hope. The first fires are more than warmth. They are light in a land swallowed by shadow. Imagine sitting at the edge of the flames, the snow outside glowing faintly under their reach, the darkness retreating just enough to reveal the outlines of your companions' faces. For early humans, this must have felt like magic. The night no longer pressed so heavy, predators lurked farther back, and stories suddenly had a stage. Here's a solid fact. Archaeological evidence shows that controlled use of fire reaches back at least 400,000 years and possibly even 1,000,000. Charred bones and ancient hearths reveal where early humans gathered long before the last great ice age. But in the frozen winters of this era, fire was not just an invention, it was a daily salvation. And here's a quirky tidbit. In some digs, archaeologists found stones blackened from repeated fires, suggesting that certain caves became long-standing family fireplaces, used by generation after generation. In a way, they were the world's first living rooms, except instead of couches, there were furs. Instead of television, there were shadows dancing on stone walls. Fire transforms more than nights. With it, food changes. Raw meat, tough and stringy, becomes softer when roasted, easier to chew and safer to eat. The smell of cooking carries across the camp, rich and tempting, even enough to draw wolves closer. Flames also harden the tips of wooden spears, giving hunters sharper tools. And beyond the practical, fire offers something intangible: comfort. The crackle and pop of burning wood, the flickering glow on frozen walls, the warmth soaking slowly into stiff hands. It is no wonder that people came to see fire as a gift from the gods, or even as a spirit itself. Yet fire is fickle. Keeping it alive is a constant task. Embers must be carried when a group moves camp, tucked carefully into bundles of bark or hollow bones glowing through the journey. Lose the fire and the clan risks freezing before they can make another. Imagine the tension in those moments when the flames gutter, low sparks fading every breath held, until one more twig catches and flares to life. Predators know fire too. Wolves and cave lions slink at the edge of its light, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness, unwilling to come closer, yet unwilling to vanish entirely. Fire is both shield and lure. It protects, but it also signals life to the watching eyes of the hungry. To guard the fire is to guard the clan. There is a touch of humour in this, even amid the seriousness. Picture a young boy tasked with feeding the fire, accidentally throwing on damp wood. The camp fills with smoke, coughing and laughter, mingling as everyone waves the haze from their eyes. At least the smoke keeps the bugs away, someone jokes, though. In this climate, the only bugs are frozen solid. But think too of the first moment when someone discovered fire's hypnotic side. Watching flames dance is almost meditative. Shadows twist into shapes and imaginations stir. Around those fires, people told stories, painted visions on cave walls, sang songs that echoed into the night. Fire was not only survival, it was the birthplace of culture. And so, in the endless winter of the Ice Age, fire becomes humanity's companion. It teaches patience in coaxing sparks, responsibility in keeping embers alive, and joy in the simple act of warming numb fingers. In a world dominated by frost, this fragile flame is defiance itself, a whisper of life against the roar of ice. The fire crackles on. Outside, the wind howls, snow sweeps across the plains and shadows stretch long. But here inside the circle of light, the clan breathes easier, for tonight the cold will not win. The fire glows faintly inside the camp, but beyond its reach the land stretches wide and empty. The clan cannot always stay huddled by flames. Survival means building a place that will endure the storms. In this world of cold and scarcity, shelters are crafted not from stone and timber, but from the bones of giants and the hides of beasts. Picture the vast skeleton of a mammoth lying on the snow ribs, curved like arches, tusks spiralling upward. To one eye it is the ruin of a creature, but to another it is an opportunity. The bones become walls, tusks are anchored into the ground, and over this frame hides are draped stitched together with sinew and pegged down with stones. From a distance such shelters look like low domes hunched against the wind blending with the snowy horizon. Inside, however, they are havens of warmth insulated against the chill by thick layers of fur and carefully packed snow. Here's a fact: archaeologists have uncovered mammoth bone dwellings in places like Ukraine and Russia, dating back more than 20,000 years. Some were over 20 feet across, large enough to hold entire extended families. They were not crude improvisations. They showed planning, craftsmanship, and a deep knowledge of available materials. Imagine the effort transporting tusks, sewing hides, and making sure no gap remained for icy drafts to sneak in. And here's a quirky tidbit: in at least one excavation, researchers found shells and decorative beads woven into the hides of a shelter, as though Ice Age families wanted not only protection, but also beauty. Even in the harshest winters, it seems someone thought this place could use a little flair, proof perhaps that interior decorating is older than farming. Inside these shelters, life finds a fragile rhythm. Fires burn in shallow pits at the centre, the smoke escaping through holes at the roof. Shadows dance across walls of hide. Children huddle in piles of furs, whispering stories, while elders sharpen tools by firelight. The space is close sometimes, uncomfortably so, yet closeness brings security. In the moan of blizzards pressed together, the family feels less like prey in an endless cold, and more like a unit strong enough to resist. The materials themselves speak of ingenuity. Sinews become rope, hides become rugs, bones form frames for tools or furniture. Snow paradoxically is a friend when packed tightly against the sides of shelters. It insulates, sealing out the wind. The very element that threatens survival also offers its aid when handled with skill. Not every shelter is made from mammoth bone. Some clans dig into riverbanks, carving caves of their own, while others settle in natural caverns hanging hides to divide space. These caves become memory vaults marked with soot and art that lingers for millennia. You can almost imagine someone leaning back against a cold wall, listening to the storm outside, thankful for rock overhead and firelight inside. Life in these shelters has its humour too. Imagine the frustration of a hunter too tall for a low mammoth bone dome, bumping his head on tusks each time he stands. Or picture children sneaking embers into the corner to make their own fire, only to be scolded when the smoke fills the hut. Even in the most unforgiving landscapes, small mistakes became sources of laughter, moments that kept spirits alive. The shelters are not just structures, they are statements of defiance. Against blizzards that can strip skin from bone, against winds that howl with teeth, humans build circles of warmth. These bone and hide homes are symbols of creativity, the same creativity that will much later raise cities of stone. Outside, wolves pad silently past their breath steaming in the air. The snow hisses softly against the hide walls, but within the clan eats, rests, and prepares. Their shelters may look fragile to us, but they are fortresses in their time. Each stitch in hide, each bone wedged into place is a declaration we are not merely surviving. We are shaping this frozen world into something livable. The Ice Age roars, the glaciers creep, the winds rage on. Yet here, under a dome of mammoth bones, humanity proves itself once again not as the strongest beast on the plain, but as the most resourceful. The shelter hums with the low murmurs, the crack of fire, and the steady rhythm of life. But the stomachs of those inside soon grow restless, and bellies remind them that safety without food is only a temporary comfort. Outside, across the endless white, move the giants, the mammoths, the bison, the woolly rhinos. To hunt them is both necessity and gamble, a dance between fragile humans and the beasts that rule the plains. Imagine stepping into the cold at dawn, the snow crunching underfoot, the air sharp enough to sting your lungs. Hunters tighten their furs and grip their spears, stone tips glinting faintly in pale light. They scan the horizon for movement, searching for the faintest plume of steam rising from the nostrils of distant animals. The plan is whispered gestures shared. Silence is essential on a frozen plain. Sound carries farther than sight. Here's a historical fact: coordinated group hunting of large Ice Age animals is evident from archaeological kill sites, where hundreds of bones lie clustered, often with cut marks from stone tools. These finds suggest that entire clans worked together, driving herds into traps or toward cliffs, not relying on lone hunters. It was a community effort with roles for everyone, from the strongest spear throwers to those who shouted and herded. And here's a quirky tidbit in one famous site in the Czech Republic. Piles of mammoth bones suggest that early humans may have lured entire herds into pit traps. Imagine the nerve it took to dig a hole deep enough, hide it with brush, and hope a beast weighing 6 tons would stumble into it. A clever plan, though perhaps someone had to learn the hard way by falling into their own pit. First history doesn't record the laughter, but you can almost hear it. The hunt itself is perilous. A charging mammoth can scatter hunters like leaves. One misplaced step and a spear breaks, leaving its wielder exposed. But success means abundance meat to roast and dry hides for clothing, and shelters, bones for tools. Nothing goes to waste. Even the marrow within the bones, rich and fatty, is prized, sucked out with relish, as though it were a rare delicacy. But hunting giants requires cunning, not brute strength. Hunters study the herds for weakness, the limping elder, the distracted mother, the calf that strays. They wait for storms or rivers to aid them, using the land itself as a weapon. In this way, humans transform from fragile individuals into a predator, unlike any other, armed with patience, teamwork, and relentless will. At night, the camp celebrates victory. Fires blaze higher as slabs of meat sizzle, and pop the smell rich enough to make mouths water across the frozen plain. Children gnaw on smaller bones, their faces greasy with fat, while elders remind them to give thanks to the spirits of the hunt. Songs rise into the cold night, part gratitude, part relief. For a little while, hunger loosens its grip. Of course not every hunt ends in triumph. There are days when prey escapes, when spears miss their mark, when hunters limp back empty-handed. On those nights, meals shrink to bitter roots, handfuls of nuts, or nothing at all. And in such moments, humour again helps soften the edge of despair. Picture a hungry hunter joking that he dreams of mammoths roasting themselves and walking politely into camp. Laughter fills bellies, if not food. The children watch all this closely, eyes wide. They see how spears are sharpened, how tracks are read, how the herd's movements can be predicted by wind and scent. They mimic the throws with small sticks, imagining themselves striking down mammoths, though for now they are still learners, their hands untested. Someday they too will step onto the snow with a spear carrying both fear and hope. To hunt giants in the Ice Age is to embrace danger, but it is also to affirm life. Each successful strike against a creature far stronger proves that intelligence can stand against brute force. It forges not only tools and meals, but also the bonds of community, where survival is never a solitary act. The plain stretches silent once more, tracks marking the snowblood steaming faintly before freezing. The hunters return, dragging their prize tired but alive. The story of this day will be told beside the fire, and in those words children will learn and humanity will remember. The campfire flickers, low bellies filled with roasted meat from the hunt. Yet feasting on mammoth or bison cannot always be relied upon. Some hunts end in failure, storms drive prey far away, or predators reach the carcass first. When meat is scarce, survival depends on smaller, humbler meals. Roots clawed from frozen soil, berries found beneath snow, or nuts stored carefully through the lean months. Picture a family digging into the frost with sharpened sticks, prying up fibrous roots. The taste is bitter, the texture chewy, but hunger is a relentless teacher. Berries, if found, clinging stubbornly to bushes even after the frost, are like tiny bursts of sweetness in a sea of blandness. Nuts cracked open with stones deliver not only food, but precious fats so vital when the cold burns energy faster than fire consumes wood. Here's a historical fact. Evidence from Ice Age sites shows that early humans were not strictly hunters, but also gatherers. Charred seeds, cracked nutshells, and grinding stones suggest they relied heavily on plants when hunting failed. The hunter-gatherer label is more than poetic. It was a balance one half sustaining when the other faltered. And a quirky tidbit: in some frozen caves, archaeologists have found remnants of roasted cattail roots, which taste vaguely like potatoes when cooked. Imagine one Ice Age cook proudly serving cattail stew, only to hear grumbles from a hunter expecting mammoth steak. Some things never change. Complaints at the dinner table may be older than fire itself. Gathering is not simple, though. Plants are buried under snow, their signs subtle. A skilled gatherer learns to read the land, the curve of a withered stem, the outline of a bush under frost, the faint smell of herbs crushed beneath the boots. Children often help their small hands, quick to pick berries or carry baskets. In this way, they learn which plants heal, which feed, and which bring sickness if chosen unwisely. Food preservation becomes just as important as gathering itself. Meat is sliced thin and dried on racks beside the fire smoke curling around it, transforming it into jerky that can last weeks. Roots are buried in frozen pits to keep them safe from scavengers. Fat is stored in skins smeared on the body to protect against frostbite or burned as fuel for lamps. Nothing is wasted, every scrap has a role. The meals themselves are simple but vital. Imagine a stew simmering in a stone pot lined with animal hide to hold liquid hot stones dropped inside to boil the water. The smell of roots and scraps of meat mingling in steam rises into the air. Hungry faces gather close spoons carved from bone dipping eagerly. It is not a feast by modern standards, but in that frozen world it is luxury. Around such meals there is conversation, laughter and teasing. One hunter jokes about how many roots it takes to equal one mammoth, while another groans that he will grow antlers from eating too many nuts. Children giggle, elders shake their heads, and for a moment the cold outside seems less cruel. Humour like food fills spaces that might otherwise be hollow. There is also ritual. Before eating, some clans whisper thanks to the spirits of the earth, acknowledging that every root pulled, every berry plucked is a gift. They believe that to show respect is to ensure more food will come. Whether belief or habit, it adds a layer of meaning to each small meal, reminding everyone that survival is not only practical, it is also spiritual. Gathering food teaches patience. Hunts are dramatic, filled with risk and triumph, but gathering is steady, quiet, and often overlooked. Yet, it is the quiet work of gatherers that often keeps families alive through long winters. Without roots, berries, and nuts, the mighty mammoth feast would be a fleeting memory. The snow thickens outside the camp. In the shelter, a mother cracks open the last of the stored nuts, passing them to her children. The fire hisses softly, the smell of roots boiling in the pot drifting into the night. In this fragile warmth, survival is stitched together from both the mighty beasts of the plains and the humble gifts hidden beneath the snow. The firelight flickers on faces weary from the day's search for food, but as the flames glow, other tasks unfold, hands busy with tools, skins, and stones. Survival in this age is not only about what can be hunted or gathered, but about what can be crafted. For in a world of teeth and ice, tools are the quiet miracle that allow fragile humans to compete with giants. Imagine a hunter crouched near the fire, a slab of flint resting on his knee. He lifts a hammer stone and strikes with careful precision. Sparks leap, and with each strike a flake breaks away, thin and sharp as a razor. The sound rings crisp in the night, chip, chip, chip. Slowly a spearhead emerges, glinting in the firelight, deadly in its simplicity. This is the heartbeat of innovation turning rock into survival. Here's a historical fact: during the Ice Age, humans perfected stone tools like the orination blades and clovis points. Some were so finely crafted that archaeologists today can barely replicate the skill. These weren't just crude rocks, they were precision instruments honed through centuries of trial and error. And here's a quirky tidbit: some tools were made not just for utility but for beauty. Archaeologists have discovered flint blades so symmetrical and delicate they seem almost impractical. Perhaps they were ceremonial, or perhaps the maker simply wanted to show off proof that even in the Ice Age there was room for pride in craftsmanship. Imagine a hunter bragging, "Sure your spear works, but look at the shine on mine." Beyond blades, ingenuity spreads to every part of life. Bones from hunts are polished into needles used to stitch furs into warm clothing. Antlers are shaped into hooks or handles, tusks into ornaments. Fibers from plants are twisted into cords, braided into ropes, strong enough to lash shelters against the wind. Nothing is wasted, each fragment becomes a piece of survival. Children watch intently, learning by imitation. A boy tries to strike flint but ends up with a dull shard. A girl pricks her finger with a bone needle, laughing through the sting. These small lessons, repeated over years, will one day make them skilled makers able to keep their clans alive. The act of making tools is as social as it is practical. Around the fire, elders correct the grip of younger hands, show how to angle a strike, or tell stories of how a perfect blade once saved the clan in a desperate hunt. These tales bind generations together, stitching knowledge into memory. There is humour too. Picture a hunter proudly holding up a finished spearhead only for it to crumble in his grip. Groans and laughter follow, with someone joking, "The mammoth will die of laughter before your spear hits it." Even failure becomes part of the learning, softened by humour that keeps spirits from breaking in the endless cold. The tools grow sharper, more specialized. Spears tipped with stone points pierce thick hides. Scrapers clean animal skins swiftly. Awls punch neat holes for sewing. With each innovation, humans tilt the balance against the cold and against predators. Slowly they become more than just another animal on the plain, they become engineers of their own survival. And still the process carries a rhythm almost artistic. The flakes of stone scatter like stars across the snow, the bone shavings curl into delicate spirals, the threads of sinew glisten in the firelight. Crafting tools is more than labour. It is creation, transformation, even meditation. In shaping the world, humans shape themselves. The fire burns low, the last embers glowing. Around it lie the fruits of patient hands, sharp points, sturdy ropes, warm furs stitched with bone needles. Outside, the night wind howls. Inside, the clan rests easier, armed with the knowledge that tomorrow when the hunt resumes, they carry more than hope, they carry tools, the inventions that make survival possible. The wind outside howls like a chorus of wolves rattling the hides of the shelter. Inside, the fire burns low, but the real warmth comes not only from flames, it comes from the circle of bodies pressed close from stories murmured into the flickering dark. This is where culture begins, not in temples or palaces, but in whispers and laughter around firelight. A mother leans close to her children, her voice rising and falling like the crackle of wood. She tells of a great mammoth who once carried the world upon its back, stomping so hard that mountains rose beneath its feet. The children's eyes widen, shadows dancing across their faces as they imagine the giant trudging across the plains. Behind them, an elder adds a twist to the tale, how the mammoth sneezed and the snowstorms were born. The shelter ripples with laughter. Here's a historical fact. Storytelling is believed to be one of humanity's oldest traditions, with archaeological evidence of symbolic thought, like cave paintings and carved figurines stretching back more than 30,000 years. Language itself may have developed largely to share stories, warnings, and lessons. In the Ice Age, a story was as essential as a spear, it taught survival. And here's a quirky tidbit. Researchers once studied fireside storytelling among modern hunter-gatherers, and found that groups who told more stories had stronger social bonds and higher cooperation in hunts. In other words, stories didn't just entertain. They helped clans work better together. So perhaps the tall tale about a sneezing mammoth had more survival value than it first seems. The stories vary. Some are practical, how to track reindeer, where to find berries, why the stars move as they do. Others are cautionary spirits that punish greed beasts, that hunt the careless rivers that swallow the unwary. And some are pure wonder, meant to make children dream instead of fear. Each tale lingers echoing long after the fire dies, shaping memory like tools shape stone. But stories are not only spoken, they are etched on walls, painted in ochre and charcoal deep inside caves. There the hunter's breath fogs the air as they trace outlines of bison and mammoths, their hands leaving red prints like signatures across time. The flicker of torches makes the painted animals seem to move as though spirits themselves walk beside the clan. These are not idle doodles, they are lessons, prayers, magic woven into stone. Around the fire, the first songs are hummed, rhythmic chants that rise and fall with the crackling flames. Drums of hollowed wood, rattles of bone filled with seeds, and flutes carved from bird bones add sound to the stories. Music lifts, spirit steadies nerves and binds voices together. It is no wonder that even today the beat of a drum or the flicker of firelight stirs something deep inside us. It is memory older than writing. And of course there is humour. Picture a storyteller exaggerating wildly, acting out the stumble of a hunter, tripping over his own spear, or the squeal of a wolf surprised by its own reflection in ice. Children giggle, adults chuckle, and for a moment the harshness of the world melts away into shared laughter. The act of gathering by fire to tell stories is more than entertainment. It is survival of the spirit. It teaches children what to fear, what to seek, and what to respect. It gives adults a way to pass knowledge without lectures wrapped in imagination. And it keeps the clan united, for a shared tale is a shared identity. Outside, the snow sweeps over the plains, erasing tracks and softening the world into silence. Inside, words echo, painting pictures that no storm can erase. Long after the bones of mammoths crumble, the stories endure, etched not in stone alone, but in memory carried forward like embers into the next dawn. Morning breaks pale and grey, the sun struggling weakly through clouds heavy with snow. Hunters step outside the shelter, their breath curling in white streams scanning the horizon for movement. To live in this age is to share the land with creatures both majestic and terrifying. Every step into the snow is a reminder that humans are not the only predators walking these plains. On the distant ridge, a shadow moves a wolf pack, their fur blending with the frost, their eyes gleaming amber in the dim light. The hunters stiffen. Wolves are both rivals and teachers. They chase the same prey, study the same winds, and live by the same rule: cooperate or starve. To watch wolves hunt is to glimpse a reflection of humanity itself. Here's a historical fact. Fossil evidence shows that humans and wolves began interacting during the Ice Age, with the earliest domesticated dogs appearing perhaps as far back as 15,000 years ago. At first, the relationship was uneasy competition for prey, but over time, wolves that lingered near human camps may have found scraps of food, eventually evolving into loyal companions. And here's a quirky tidbit one. Ice Age burial uncovered a man laid to rest with a puppy at his side, carefully placed as though it were family. It's proof that long before golden retrievers stole sandwiches off modern tables, humans and canines were already bound by affection. But not all encounters are friendly. On another stretch of plain, a saber-toothed cat prowls, muscles rippling beneath its tawny coat. Its fangs gleam, curved daggers meant to pierce the throats of prey. To stumble upon such a beast is to step into a nightmare. Hunters know this, and they whisper tales of those who never returned after following fresh tracks too boldly. And beyond the cats are cave bears, towering creatures that retreat into hibernation in winter, but awaken hungry and short-tempered. Imagine pushing into a dark cave torch raised only to find a bear stirring. The stories told later would likely be brief, and probably interrupted by shudders and laughter at the sheer madness of anyone entering such caves uninvited. Still, fear is balanced with respect. These predators, dangerous as they are, shape human behavior. Hunters study their patterns, learn to avoid their paths, and even imitate their tactics. Just as wolves circle prey, and saber-tooths stalk silently, so too do humans refine their strategies, borrowing from beasts stronger and swifter than themselves. Around the fire that night, the clan tells of animals as spirits, wolves as guides, cats as shadows, bears as guardians of caves. Children listen wide-eyed, imagining these creatures not only as threats, but as beings woven into the fabric of survival. For to respect them is to understand them, and to understand them is to endure. There is humour too. One hunter tells of a wolf that stole meat from under his very nose, so bold it wagged its tail before trotting off. Another insists that saber-tooths fear his singing voice, which conveniently explains why he always sings loudly on hunts. The shelter fills with laughter, even as everyone knows that tomorrow teeth and claws may again test their courage. Predators are reminders that humanity is fragile, but they also push humans to grow clever, to make sharper tools, stronger shelters, and deeper bonds. In this age, survival is not about eliminating danger. It is about living alongside it, learning from it, and sometimes even befriending it. The wolves still linger at the ridge, their shapes barely visible against the snow. They watch the hunters, and the hunters watch them. Between them lies a silent understanding. Both are clans bound by cooperation. Both are survivors of the cold. And though they do not know it yet, one day their paths will merge, and the howl of the wolf will become the song of the campfire. Snowflakes drift thick and slow, muffling the world in white silence. The hunters return from the plains, dragging a meagre catch, just enough for the day. Inside the shelter, the fire is fed, but smoke curls lazily upward, a reminder that warmth is fragile. The bitter truth of this age is that survival is not only about finding food or avoiding predators, it is about mastering the cold itself. The temperature drops so low that breath freezes on furs, forming icy beards that crunch when touched. Frost creeps into shelters, crystals blooming on walls like delicate flowers. Fingers stiffen, toes go numb, and if one lingers too long outside, the cold becomes not just uncomfortable but deadly. Hypothermia creeps in, silently whispering drowsiness, tempting tired bodies to lie down and rest. To fight it is a battle of willpower as much as endurance. Here's a historical fact. Ice Age humans adapted by layering multiple hides and furs, sometimes stitching together garments with bone needles and sinew. Archaeologists have even found figurines wearing what appear to be hooded parkas, suggesting early versions of the very coats we still wear today in polar regions. Fashion born of necessity has a surprisingly long history. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some groups smeared their skin with animal fat not only as fuel for lamps, but as insulation against frostbite. Imagine a hunter proudly explaining that his secret to survival is the same ingredient you'd use for frying mammoth steaks. Practical if not exactly glamorous, the fire itself is life. Gathering wood in this frozen age is a chore more grueling than hunting. Trees are scarce, and branches buried beneath snow must be pried loose with numb hands. Sometimes dried dung from animals is burned instead, crackling and smoking fiercely but giving off enough heat to matter. Children giggle at the smell while adults shake their heads. Survival rarely smells pleasant. To keep warmth, shelters are insulated with snow itself packed tightly to block the wind. Paradoxically, snow becomes a blanket holding in heat instead of stealing it away. Inside, hides are layered thick on the floor and families huddle close. Warmth is shared literally body to body. Babies are swaddled in furs pressed against their mothers' chests. Elders wrap their hands around heated stones carried in from the fire. Yet even with every effort, frostbite still creeps in. Blackened fingers and toes are grim reminders of nights when the fire failed, or the storm raged too fiercely. Jokes help soften the pain. An elder might lift a stiffened finger and mutter, "At least I don't need this one for spear throwing anymore." Laughter ripples, and though the joke is dark, it carries warmth of its own. There are rituals too. Before sleep, someone tends the fire, carefully placing the best wood or dung at its heart, whispering to it as though it were a spirit. To lose the fire at night is to wake in icy silence, breath-frozen bodies stiff. So fire is treated as kin, a companion that must be fed, protected and honoured. And when storms sweep across the land, shaking the shelter and burying it under snow, the family inside waits it out pressed close, telling stories and humming songs. Time slows. The storm rages, but within the cocoon of hides and smoke life persists, hearts beating together against the vast cold. Outside, the night deepens, temperatures plunging until the stars themselves seem brittle in the sky. Inside, though, the fire glows steady, sparks drifting upward like tiny suns. The people breathe easier, warmed not just by flame but by one another. Against the harshest winters of prehistory, warmth is more than heat. It is survival stitched together with fire furs and fellowship. The storm clears by morning, leaving the world cloaked in white silence. Snowdrifts rise like frozen waves across the plain, swallowing landmarks, reshaping paths. For those who wander too far, every direction looks the same. White sky above white ground, below horizon, blurred into nothingness. In such a world, the question is not only how to move, but how to know where to go. Hunters and gatherers read the land as carefully as a storyteller reads a tale. A bent tree, a ridge of stone, a frozen river glimmering faintly beneath snow, all become guides. They note the angle of the sun when it pierces the clouds, the steady pull of the wind, the tracks of animals leading to water. Navigation in the Ice Age is not done with compasses or maps, but with memory and instinct. Here's a historical fact. Archaeological evidence suggests that Ice Age humans followed seasonal migration routes, often covering vast distances to track herds of mammoth reindeer or bison. Some routes stretched hundreds of miles, crossing glaciers, rivers and valleys. These journeys required not only stamina, but precise knowledge of geography passed down across generations. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some researchers believe that the earliest maps may have been carved into bones or antlers, patterns of lines that represented rivers, hunting grounds or herds. Imagine sitting by a fire, tracing your finger over a mammoth tusk as someone explains, "Follow this curve and you'll find the river where the reindeer cross." It's an Ice Age GPS, though decidedly less portable. Moving across snow demands creativity. Feet sink deep, exhausting the body with each step. To combat this, people lash wide pieces of wood or bone to their feet, crude ancestors of snowshoes spreading their weight across the surface. With these, hunters move more swiftly, leaving smaller prints that confuse predators. A clever adaptation, though surely accompanied by plenty of clumsy falls before the technique was mastered. Migration itself is an ordeal. Families load hides, tools and dried food onto sleds dragged by hand or by tamed reindeer in later times. Children ride bundled in furs, peeking out with wide eyes as the world rolls by in endless white. Elders walk slowly, leaning on staffs, their wisdom guiding the group even as their bodies tire. The caravan stretches across the plain, a fragile thread of life against the vast emptiness. Along the way there are dangers. Thin ice cracks underfoot, plunging the unwary into freezing water. Blizzards sweep down, suddenly forcing everyone to huddle together until visibility returns. Predators stalk the edges, watching for weakness, and always hunger waits if the herds are not found. To travel in this world is to gamble everything on memory and hope, but there are rewards too. Migration brings people to valleys sheltered from wind, to rivers thick with fish, to plains where reindeer gather in uncountable herds. These moments are feasts after famine, a reminder that movement, though exhausting, is the rhythm of survival. At night on the trail, fires burn small and cautious, their light flickering on weary faces. Stories are told of great journeys past, of ancestors who crossed mountains of hunters, who followed stars of children born on the march. Humour breaks the weariness. Someone grumbles that the snowdrifts grow taller just to spite them, and laughter bubbles up, lightening heavy legs. Each journey leaves invisible lines across the land paths worn into memory rather than soil. Long before maps or roads, these were the first highways, trails of survival, traced by countless footsteps in snow. And though storms erase the tracks, the knowledge endures past from elder to child, guiding the next migration when the herds move again. In the vast stillness of the Ice Age movement is life. Standing still means hunger. But each step forward, no matter how heavy as a declaration, humans will not yield to the cold nor to the endless snow. They will walk, they will learn, and they will endure. The frozen plain stretches wide, but not all life clings to the open snow. Beyond the white horizon lie forests sparse in some regions, thick and shadowed in others, where towering pines and birches rise like sentinels, their branches heavy with frost. To step beneath them is to enter a different world, hushed and dark, the wind softened by needles and bark. Here survival takes a new shape for the forest, offers both refuge and danger. Hunters tread carefully on pine needle paths, muffled compared to the crunch of open snow. The air smells of resin and damp earth, a relief from the sterile bite of the wind outside. They move silently, eyes sharp for signs of a life deer nibbling at bark, wild boar rooting beneath drifts, rabbits darting between roots. The forest is alive with sounds, the tapping of woodpeckers, the rustle of branches, the distant call of crows. Each is a clue, a signal to those who know how to listen. Here's a historical fact: Ice Age humans exploited varied environments, not just open tundra. In forested areas, they hunted red deer, wild boar, and smaller game, supplementing the meat of mammoth and bison, with more frequent but less dramatic catches. Traps and snares were often used here, designed to blend seamlessly with the undergrowth. And here's a quirky tidbit: archaeologists in Germany discovered wooden throwing spears over 300,000 years old, preserved in a peat bog, perfectly balanced, crafted from spruce. It seems that Ice Age hunters valued their woodland weapons so much that even modern javelin throwers would nod in approval. You can almost picture someone in the clan boasting mine flies straighter than yours. Just ask the deer. Forests provide more than meat. Bark can be stripped for fibre, sap used as adhesive pine resin, chewed like ancient gum. Edible mushrooms sprout in damp patches, and herbs with healing properties are gathered carefully by those who know their secrets. One plant may soothe a wound, another calm a fever, while a mistaken choice might bring sickness. Knowledge here is power passed down like treasure. But shadows hold danger too. In the thickets, prowl lynxes, their paws silent, on snow eyes glowing green in twilight. Bears may slumber in hollow trees, disturbed only by the unlucky traveller. And the forest itself can mislead, every tree seeming alike, paths twisting until even the skilled grow uncertain. To wander unprepared is to risk vanishing into the endless maze of trunks. Yet despite the risks, the forest is a place of wonder. Children chase each other between roots, laughing as snow falls in soft showers from branches above. Elders carve sticks by the fire, their knives working slowly shaping tools from wood the forest so freely gives. The very shelters are improved by its sturdy poles lashed with sinew roofs that shed snow better than hides alone. At night the fire glows against bark shadows stretching tall and strange. Stories take on new flavours here, tales of tree spirits that whisper in the wind, or animals that guard hidden groves. Someone jokes that squirrels are spirits in disguise sent to test human patience by stealing nuts from storage. Laughter echoes through the branches as vital as warmth. The forest, for all its silence, becomes a second home. Its gifts are humbler than those of the plains, but steadier, more reliable. A rabbit caught in a snare may not compare to a mammoth, yet it fills a belly just the same. The wood for a spear, the resin for fire, the bark for shelter. All are small miracles gathered in the shadows of trees, As the clan rests beneath the canopy, snow drifting gently through the branches above the forest, whispers its lesson. Survival is not only about strength or courage. It is about listening, watching, and using every gift of the land. In the hush of pines and the creak of frozen bark, humanity finds not just resources but resilience. The Ice Age is not only a story of cold, it is a story of fire against frost of sparks struck from stone and coaxed into life. Imagine crouching in the dim shelter, your fingers numb a bundle of dry grass before you. A piece of flint rests in one hand, a chunk of iron pyrite in the other. You strike them together, once, twice a shower of sparks leaps forth. One ember lands glowing faintly, and you bend close, blowing gently until smoke curls upward. Slowly a flame blossoms, fragile yet fierce, pushing back the night. Here's a historical fact: fire-making in the Ice Age often relied on flint and pyrite, with sparks caught in tinder made from dried grass fungus or shredded bark. Later the bow drill would be developed, but even before that, people carried embers wrapped in bark or dung, keeping fire alive as they travelled rather than risking losing it altogether. To have fire was to have life. And here's a quirky tidbit: one ancient fungus called amadou, found growing on birch trees, was prized as tinder. When dried and prepared, it caught sparks easily. Centuries later, the same fungus was used by knights to light cannons. So in a way, the humble Ice Age fire starter became medieval battlefield technology proof that good ideas have very long shelf lives. Fire is more than warmth. It is light against predators' smoke to preserve meat heat to harden spear points, and a circle of safety around which stories and songs take root. The flames transform tough roots into edible meals, drive chill from sodden hides, and melt snow into precious water. Without it, the Ice Age is not survivable. Children learn early to tend flames their faces serious as they add twigs, and whisper encouragement as though speaking to a living creature. Elders tell them never to anger the fire, never to let it die. There are rituals: a spark struck at dawn for good fortune, a log placed carefully at night to carry heat until morning. To the clan, fire is not merely a tool. It is kin, a companion with a temper and a gift. Humour finds its place here too. Someone jokes that the fire eats more than the hunters, devouring every scrap of wood faster than a pack of wolves. Another grumbles that sparks always find the one hole in his hide cloak, leaving burns that sting worse than frostbite. Laughter mingles with smoke, lightening the solemn work of tending flames. Yet fire is also danger. A shelter too close to a blaze may catch, turning safety into disaster. Sparks can leap into furs, or smoke can suffocate if the hide flap is not lifted. Stories circulate of clans who lost everything to fire's hunger, a reminder that the same flame that gives life can also take it away. Still, the benefits outweigh the risks. Around the fire, families huddle, their shadows dancing on the walls. Songs rise accompanied by the beat of hands on hide drums, voices lifting into the smoke. The fire becomes the heart of the clan, pulsing warmth and rhythm into the long night. And when dawn comes, hunters rise and carry embers in bark bundles, glowing coals carefully protected against the wind. Wherever they go, the fire goes with them, as constant as their own heartbeat. The Ice Age is often remembered for its cold, but in truth it is the story of fire as much as ice. Against endless winter, humanity does not simply endure, they kindle, they nurture, and they carry warmth forward one spark at a time. The snow has its silence, the fire its warmth, but there is another presence that shapes Ice Age life: the sky. At night, when storms clear and the air grows sharp and still, people lift their eyes to the stars scattered across the black dome. They shimmer cold and constant, 1,000 fires far beyond reach. For those who walk the frozen earth, the heavens above are not just decoration. They are a map, a clock, and a mystery. The hunters gather outside the shelter, their furs pulled tight, breath steaming upward. They trace shapes in the constellations, pointing out familiar clusters. Perhaps it is the curve of a bear, the line of a hunter with a raised spear, or the arc of a great bird flying eternally. These figures guide journeys, marking directions when snow buries every landmark. They signal seasons too. When certain stars rise earlier, it means the herds will soon shift, and the people must be ready to follow. Here's a historical fact. Archaeological findings like the 32,000-year-old cave drawings in Lascaux, France, suggest that Ice Age people may have recorded star patterns alongside animals. Some scholars argue that certain dots and symbols match the Pleiades or Orion's belt, hinting that even then humans were mapping the sky. And here's a quirky tidbit. One ancient carving on mammoth ivory may be the oldest lunar calendar, a series of notches possibly tracking the phases of the moon. Imagine explaining to your clan, "No, we can't hunt mammoth today, it's the wrong moon." Even then humans had the urge to mark time with more than just hungry stomachs. Around the fire, myths are spun from the stars. Children listen wide-eyed as elders tell of glowing animals that roam the sky forever chasing or fleeing one another. The Milky Way becomes a river of ice, a path walked by spirits who guide the lost. Shooting stars are believed to be sparks from the great fires of the heavens, or perhaps the breath of the sky beasts. Humour threads into the awe. One hunter insists the stars are simply holes poked in the roof of the world, letting firelight leak through. Another swears he once saw a bear climb up a tree and vanish straight into the sky where it became a constellation. The shelter fills with laughter, the sky suddenly less distant, more familiar. But reverence remains. The stars remind the clan that they are small yet not alone. The same constellations watched by their ancestors now watch them steady and unchanging. In a world where storms erase footprints overnight and herds vanish into the horizon, the sky offers something rare: constancy. On the coldest nights when hunger gnaws and predators lurk, people still lift their eyes upward. They find courage in the glittering expanse, believing that the heavens hold stories greater than their struggles. Perhaps those stories explain why the winter endures, or why the mammoth roam, or why fire burns so brightly in the dark. The Ice Age is a world of harshness, but under the stars it becomes also a world of wonder. The sky is both guide and mystery, both clock and canvas. And as people huddle in furs drifting towards sleep, the constellations shimmer above, whispering that even in the longest nightlight is always present if only one remembers to look upward. Morning brings little warmth, but it brings movement. The clan stirs, stretching stiff limbs beneath furs, their eyes turning quickly to the horizon. Food is never certain here. The hunters must leave again, spears in hand, scanning for the faintest sign of prey. The open plain is a gamble, too exposed, too risky if herds are scarce. But the river's winding dark veins across the land promise both water and life. The ice crusts thick upon their surface, but cracks glimmer faintly, whispering of the current beneath. Hunters kneel, listening with ears pressed to the frozen sheet, catching the muffled rush below. Fish dart unseen, but the sound, the vibration tells its own story. With stone tools and patience, they hack holes into the ice, their breath rising in clouds as they set bone hooks baited with scraps. Waiting is half the work, though waiting in the cold makes minutes drag like hours. Here's a historical fact: Ice Age peoples in northern Europe and Siberia used fishing not only for food, but for tools crafting needles and harpoons from fish bones. Frozen rivers and lakes could provide a steady supply of protein when mammoth hunts failed. Even in the harshest seasons, fish became a lifeline. And here's a quirky tidbit. Ancient carved figurines shaped like fish have been found in caves, perhaps used as charms for luck. It's easy to imagine a weary fisher muttering, "Come on, little carving, do your job," much the same way people today glare at bobbing lines and hope for a bite. Some frustrations never change. Fishing is not the only river task. Ice can be harvested for water, and reeds gathered along the edges make weaving material for mats or baskets. Sometimes hunters test the thin spots for crossings, though the risk is great. A misstep can plunge someone into freezing water where minutes mean life or death. Those who fall in are dragged out quickly, stripped and pressed against fires, while the clan jokes afterward that the unlucky one just wanted a bath too badly. Beyond the rivers, hunting shifts to smaller, quicker prey. Snares set in narrow animal trails catch rabbits and hares, their tracks like stitched lines across the snow. Deadfalls drop heavy logs upon foxes drawn to bait. The children are often the ones who check these traps, returning with proud smiles and dangling their prizes by the ears. Small, yes, but enough to keep hunger at bay. Still, the dream is always the herd, the heavy thud of mammoth or bison, the feast that can last for weeks. The rivers and snares are survival, the herds are triumph. Yet humans cannot live on triumph alone, and so each rabbit, caught each fish, pulled from the icy water, is celebrated like treasure. At night the clan roasts their catch skin, crackling fat dripping into the flames. The smell fills the shelter-lifting spirits. Someone pretends the rabbit is a mammoth calf, puffing their chest, and declaring they've saved the clan with their mighty hunt. The firelight dances with laughter, and bellies for once are full enough. The rivers freeze again in silence, their secrets hidden beneath ice. But the people know them just as they know the herds and forests. Each crack, each ripple, each track in the snow is part of a vast puzzle they've learned to read. The world is harsh, but it speaks in signs, and those who listen endure. The days stretch on, marked less by time than by hunger. The clan moves steadily across the plains, searching for larger prey. For weeks they have survived on fish and rabbits, but the signs in the snow whisper of something greater. Broad tracks, deep and rounded, press into the frost. Broken branches stand like clues stripped clean, at a height no human could reach. The hunter's eyes sharpen. These are the traces of giants. The mammoth is more than food. It is fur, fat, bone, sinew, and spirit. To face one is to confront both opportunity and peril. The hunters whisper to one another as they study the trail, their voices hushed, as if the beast itself might hear. They know the risks. A mammoth can crush a man with a single swing of its trunk, or scatter hunters with tusks that gleam like curved swords. Yet the reward is beyond measure. Here's a historical fact. Evidence from kill sites suggests that Ice Age humans used coordinated strategies to bring down mammoths, driving them into bog traps or narrow valleys, where spears could be thrown safely from many directions. It was not strength, but cooperation that made such hunts possible. And here's a quirky tidbit in Siberia. Mammoth bones have been found arranged in circular patterns, believed to be the remains of huts built from tusks and ribs covered with hides. Imagine sitting in a bone house sipping melted snow and joking that at least your walls won't blow down in the wind. Ice Age architecture had a flair for the dramatic. The hunt begins at dawn. The hunters fan out, moving silently through the snow, their spears tipped with sharpened flint. They wait for the mammoth herd to slow near a narrow gully. The women and children remain behind tending fires, but their eyes linger on the hunters as they vanish over the ridge. The herd appears like mountains in motion, their shaggy coats dusted with frost breath steaming into the sky. The hunters advance cautiously, keeping the wind at their back so their scent drifts away. Then, with cries that shatter the stillness, they surge forward, driving the herd toward the gully. Snow churns, tusks flash, and the ground shakes beneath pounding feet. The mammoths trumpet in protest, a sound that rattles the bones. Spears fly, striking flanks, embedding in thick hides. The hunters work as one, circling, shouting, pressing the herd into tighter spaces. A young bull stumbles, slipping in the churned snow. The hunters seize their chance, closing in with spears, thrust again and again until the great beast collapses, the ground trembling with its final fall. The air fills with silence, broken only by the heavy breathing of hunters and the soft rumble of the remaining herd retreating into the distance. They do not celebrate yet. They approach carefully, ensuring the beast is still. Only then do they raise their voices, calling out to the others, announcing victory. The work begins immediately. Knives of stone cut through hide, releasing steam and the rich smell of blood. Fat is carefully gathered meat carved into great slabs, bones separated for tools and shelter. Nothing is wasted. Children arrive, wide-eyed, carrying baskets to help, while elders oversee ensuring traditions are followed. Prayers are whispered to the spirit of the mammoth, thanking it for its sacrifice. By nightfall, the camp is transformed. Fires blaze, meat roasts, the scent drifting across the snow. For the first time in weeks, bellies are full beyond hunger. Stories flow with laughter. Someone mimics the mammoth's trumpet until children collapse. Giggling, another boasts that his spear alone toppled the beast, a claim no one quite believes. The mammoth has given more than food. It has given warmth in hides, tools in bone glue and sinew, light in fat for lamps. It has given the clan another season of life. In its death, it ensures their survival. And as the fire crackles, the people know that they too are part of the great cycle of this frozen world. Hunters, yet also dependents of the very beasts they pursue. The mammoth feast lingers in memory, but the plains do not forgive complacency. Days after the great hunt, the weather shifts. A wall of grey looms on the horizon, rolling forward with a force that silences even the bravest. The wind begins first sharp and whistling, then grows into a howl that rattles bone shelters and drives snow sideways across the land. A blizzard has come. The hunters rush to secure what they can. Meat is wrapped tightly in hides, dragged into pits lined with snow to preserve it. Fires are stoked higher, though the smoke is quickly torn away by the gale. Children cling to their mothers as snow snakes beneath the hide flaps of shelters, dusting the floor in white. Outside, the world vanishes. Horizon erased, the familiar plain swallowed in a whirling storm. Here's a historical fact: during the Ice Age, sudden weather shifts were common. Climatic records show that temperatures could plummet or rise dramatically in just a few decades, forcing constant adaptation. For hunters and gatherers, storms weren't merely inconveniences, they were life and death trials that could last for weeks. And here's a quirky tidbit: archaeologists studying Ice Age shelters have found piles of animal dung deliberately stored for burning. Imagine the storm howling outside while someone proudly announces, "Don't worry, we've got plenty of frozen bison poop to keep us warm. It might not be glamorous, but it works." Inside the shelter, the clan huddles close. The fire sputters, struggling against drafts. Elders tell stories, their voices raised above the roar of the storm, weaving tales of sky spirits who shake snow from their cloaks and winds that test the courage of the living. Children listen wide-eyed, half in fear, half in awe, comforted by the rhythm of words. Outside, the cold deepens. Those who venture even a few steps into the storm risk disorientation. Snow erases tracks within seconds. A hunter once told of leaving to fetch a branch just beyond sight of the firelight, only to wander in circles until he stumbled back, his lashes frozen, his face rimmed with ice. That story is repeated now, a warning not to stray. Days blur together in the white darkness. Supplies dwindle, though carefully rationed. Frozen meat is cut into thin strips, and roasted quickly fat shared in small portions to fuel weary bodies. Children grow restless, carving shapes into the frost with sticks while adults repair tools or stitch hides. Jokes bubble up even here. Someone pretends to argue with the storm, shouting insults into the wind until laughter fills the shelter. Humour, fragile as it is, becomes another kind of fire. Then slowly the storm begins to fade. The wind lessens, the snow grows lighter, and at last light pierces the gloom. The clan emerges, cautiously blinking in brightness. The world has changed, drifts pile higher than a man's shoulders, the plain reshaped into frozen waves. Landmarks are buried, trails lost, but the silence feels almost sacred after days of chaos. Survival through the blizzard is more than endurance. It is proof of resilience. Each storm overcome is a reminder that humanity is not fragile driftwood tossed on the wind, but rooted beings who can bend without breaking. The clan breathes the sharp air, their furs crusted with frost, and feels something like triumph. They have withstood the fury of the Ice Age once again. When the storm passes, the world seems eerily new. The landscape is a blank canvas of white, the familiar ridges and valleys buried beneath towering drifts. For the hunters, this is both challenge and opportunity. Tracks of animals that once marked their trails are erased, forcing them to read the land afresh. Yet the snow also reveals secret, soft depressions, faint trails pressed by hooves or paws that lead to life in the frozen stillness. The first to test the new snow are the scouts. Wrapped in furs, they press cautiously into the drifts, their feet sinking deep. Progress is slow, but their eyes are sharp. Soon they find signs, a cluster of willow branches stripped of bark, nibbled clean. Droppings half buried in snow. The delicate trace of reindeer hooves crisscrossing a ridge. Life has endured the blizzard just as they have. Here's a historical fact: reindeer were central to Ice Age survival. Herds numbering in the thousands once roamed across Europe and Asia, providing not only meat, but hides for clothing and sinew for sewing. In fact, reindeer bone harpoons and needles are some of the earliest examples of specialized Ice Age tools. And here's a quirky tidbit: some carvings of reindeer from Ice Age caves show them swimming, suggesting people may have driven herds into rivers to slow them down for easier hunting. Picture the scene: hunters with spears on the riverbank, cheering as reindeer paddle desperately by while someone mutters, "Well, this just turned into fishing with legs." The clan prepares a hunt. Unlike the mammoth, the reindeer are swifter and more cautious. Traps are laid in narrow passes, and hunters crouch in silence with spears poised. When the herd finally approaches, their breath steaming in the cold, the hunters spring forward with cries that echo across the snow. The reindeer scatter, but several are brought down, their sleek bodies collapsing into the drifts. Back at camp, the work begins. Reindeer hides are thinner than mammoth skin, perfect for making winter clothing. Sinew is stripped, carefully dried, and twisted into thread, strong enough to stitch thick furs. Antlers are carved into hooks, and points their curved shapes lending themselves to tools. Meat is smoked over fires, its scent rising sweet and heavy into the crisp air. Children take part too, practicing scraping hides with small stone flakes, their faces serious, as if they know how vital the task is. Elders teach them which parts of the animal to save the stomach lining for water bags, the fat for lamps. Nothing is wasted. In this world, nothing can be. At night, bellies full from roasted meat, the clan relaxes around the fire. Someone imitates the reindeer's startled leap during the hunt, sending children into fits of giggles. Another boasts he outran the herd himself, though the others shake their heads knowingly. Stories weave into laughter and laughter into song, the firelight flickering against snow piled high around their shelter. The reindeer hunt may not be as dramatic as the mammoth chase, but it is steady, reliable. It is the kind of survival that carries a clan through endless winters. In the Ice Age, triumph is not always in the grand and the mighty. It is in the quiet persistence, the small victories repeated again and again until survival itself becomes its own story. The reindeer meat smokes gently over the fires, but the clan knows it will not last forever. In the Ice Age, survival means always thinking ahead. It is not enough to eat today. One must plan for tomorrow and the tomorrow after that. The hunters and gatherers turn their attention to food storage, the careful art of keeping abundance from slipping into ruin. Snow and ice themselves become tools. Pits are dug into the frozen ground, lined with stones or bones, then packed with snow. Meat is placed inside, wrapped in hide bundles sealed from scavengers. The cold turns the pit into nature's own cellar. Still, the hunters mark each storage place with tall branches, knowing a storm could otherwise erase its location overnight. Here's a historical fact: Ice Age people practiced advanced preservation methods long before farming. Archaeological evidence suggests drying, smoking and freezing meat were all common depending on the season. Some groups even rendered fat into a paste mixed with berries, a precursor to later foods like pemmican-dense energy for long journeys. And here's a quirky tidbit: in some regions, marrow bones were stored like little treasure chests. Hunters knew that even if meat spoiled cracking, open a frozen bone weeks later still yielded rich, nutritious marrow. Imagine finding such a snack stash under the snow and bragging, "See, I'm basically the Ice Age's first chef." Smoking fires burn day and night, tendrils of fragrant haze curling into the air. Meat strips hang from wooden racks, drying into tough, leathery jerky. Children complain that the smell makes their stomachs growl, while elders warn them not to steal bites too soon. Patience is as much a skill as hunting. Seeds, nuts, and berries, rare in winter but precious when found, are also stored carefully. Dried berries brighten long months when fresh food is scarce. Sometimes they are strung on sinew cords and hung like decorations along the shelter walls, a touch of colour in the monochrome world. Of course, not all storage is secure. Wolves circle camps at night, drawn by the smell of smoked meat. Bears half-starved and desperate may dig into caches. Stories circulate of clever animals stealing food just as easily as rival clans. Once a hunter awoke to find a fox dragging off an entire strip of jerky, its bushy tail waving like a banner of triumph. That tale, retold with laughter, becomes a cautionary reminder to guard supplies well. Still, the storage works. Weeks later, when storms cut off the hunt or herds wander too far, the clan reaches into their caches and pulls out food that still sustains. The taste may be tougher, smokier, less joyful than fresh kill, but it is the taste of survival. And around the fire, as the clan chews on smoked strips and cracks frozen bones for marrow, they find pride in their preparations. To survive in the Ice Age is not only about the strength of the hunt, it is about foresight, patience, and the clever use of a world that seems determined to starve them. The caches stand buried beneath snow, hidden but waiting silent promises of tomorrow's meals. In the frozen wilderness that promises worth as much as life itself. The caches are secure, the fires steady, but survival is not only about food, it is also about the homes that guard against the endless wind. To endure in the Ice Age, humans become architects of necessity, shaping bone, hide, and earth into sanctuaries. On the plain where trees are scarce, mammoth bones serve as walls. Huge tusks curve upward, rib bones rise like pillars, skulls anchor corners. Over this skeletal frame, hides are stretched tight, stitched with sinew, and weighed down with stones. Snow is packed against the sides, sealing cracks, turning fragile shelters into warm cocoons. To enter such a place is to step into the belly of a beast, its strength repurposed to guard the living. Here's a historical fact: archaeological sites in Ukraine and Russia have uncovered mammoth bone houses dating back over 15,000 years. These dwellings, some nearly circular, show how Ice Age humans engineered stability from the very animals they hunted. And here's a quirky tidbit: one such house had dozens of mammoth skulls stacked in layers. Whether it was for stability or to impress the neighbours, no one knows, but imagine bringing a guest inside and casually remarking, "Mind the wall of heads, it's load-bearing." In forested regions, homes take other shapes. Branches bend into domes covered with hides and insulated with moss. Snow, though cold, becomes an ally when piled thick over a roof. It traps heat, turning the interior surprisingly warm. Children squeal as they crawl through low entrances, their laughter muffled inside. Tools are made for the work bone needles longer than a finger-piercing hide with precision. Women sit by the fire stitching seams, their movements rhythmic voices humming as they work. Men haul bones and stones their shoulders straining. Even children help dragging smaller branches, learning the craft through play. Of course, shelters are not permanent. As herds move, so too must the people. But the skill to raise and abandon, to carry and rebuild, becomes second nature. Hides are folded bones left behind, yet the memory of the structure guides the next. Every camp is both home and a rehearsal for the next journey. Inside these shelters, life unfolds in warmth. Firelight flickers against walls of hide shadows of hunters and children dancing across curved surfaces. Smoke curls upward, escaping through small openings. Tools hang neatly from tusks, baskets rest in corners. The smell of roasting meat mingles with musk and leather, heavy but familiar. And humour as always has its place. Someone jokes that a drafty gap is the door for spirits, while another brags that his hide seam is straighter than any rival's. Laughter echoes even as the storm rages outside, reminding all that home is more than bone and hide. It is the warmth of voices within. The Ice Age does not grant luxury, but it does not strip creativity either. In every shelter, humans shape their resilience into walls and roofs. They carve safety out of bone-weave security from sinew, and pack endurance into every snow-filled crack. Each dwelling is a small defiance, a statement to the frost we belong here too. Shelters keep out the wind, but they cannot silence the constant presence of danger. Beyond the walls of bone and hide, predators move silently, their paws pressing into the snow with the same hunger that drives humans to hunt. Wolves slink through the night, their howls echoing like mournful horns. Lions, larger than any alive today, prowl the plains, their golden coats blending with frost-tipped grass. Even bears, half-starved from winter's long grip, roam near camps, their massive bodies shaking snow from their fur as they sniff for scraps. The hunters know these animals well. They study tracks in the snow, the neat oval pads of wolves, the wider claw-marked impressions of bears. Every sign is a warning. Children are taught early how to read them, and how to keep close to the fire when the world darkens. Here's a historical fact: during the Ice Age, humans shared Europe and Asia with cave lions, giant bears and dire wolves, predators larger and more formidable than their modern descendants. Fossil evidence shows that humans sometimes hunted these beasts, but more often they were in competition chasing the same prey. And here's a quirky tidbit in caves where humans once sheltered. Claw marks of lions and bears have been found carved into the walls. It seems that even before people decorated the caves, predators left their own graffiti behind. One can almost imagine a lion scratching the stone and thinking mine now, long before humans moved in. Encounters are not rare. A pack of wolves may trail a hunting party for days waiting for weakness. Their glowing eyes hover just beyond firelight, and the hunters throw burning sticks to drive them back. Lions sometimes stalk silently until a sudden rush scatters the clan in alarm, only to melt back into the night with nothing but fear left behind. Bears are the most dangerous. One swipe of a paw can shatter bone. The people speak of them with respect, often leaving offerings of meat to keep them at bay. But the relationship is not only fear. There is admiration, even envy. Hunters watch the patience of wolves, how they work as a pack to bring down prey. They note how lions move silently, how bears store strength through hibernation. In stories told around the fire, predators become teachers as much as threats, shaping the myths that explain survival itself. Still, danger remains very real. Once a young hunter ventures too far from camp, following rabbit tracks. When he does not return, a search party finds his broken spear and the claw-marked snow. His name is spoken in hushed tones for weeks, a reminder that the Ice Age is not generous with mistakes. And yet even here, humour sneaks in. One night, as wolves howl in the distance, an elder pretends to mimic them, his voice cracking comically. The children laugh, their fear easing. Another jokes that the bears are simply lazy hunters, waiting for humans to do the work. Laughter bubbles against fear, a shield as strong as fire. In the balance between hunter and hunted, humans carve out survival. They are not the strongest nor the swiftest, but they are the most watchful. Their eyes catch what others miss. Their hands shape weapons, their voices share knowledge. Against claws and fangs they wield memory and cunning. It is enough barely, but enough. The predators stalk the edges of the firelight, but within the circle of warmth another kind of power rises, the shaping of tools. To face mammoth reindeer or lion with bare hands would be folly. Instead, humans of the Ice Age refined stone, bone and wood into weapons and implements, transforming raw material into survival. Hunters crouch over flakes of flint, striking one stone against another. Sparks fly, sharp edges snap free. Each chip is shaped deliberately, producing points as fine as razors. The rhythm of napping echoes through the camp, a steady click and crack like the heartbeat of invention. Here's a historical fact: Ice Age toolkits grew increasingly complex. The Aurignacian culture over 30,000 years ago produced long blades from carefully prepared stone cores, while later groups developed microliths, tiny sharp pieces set into wood or bone to form composite tools. These innovations gave hunters a versatile arsenal. And here's a quirky tidbit: some Ice Age spear points were so finely made that archaeologists once mistook them for ceremonial objects rather than weapons. Imagine explaining, "No, really, I made this perfect spear point just to actually throw at a bison." Even in prehistory, craftsmanship could be mistaken for art. Bone and antler are shaped alongside stone. Hunters carve barbs into reindeer antlers, creating harpoons that grip slippery fish. Women fashion needles from bird bones, their tips sharp enough to pierce tough hide. The sinew thread they pull tight hums faintly like a bowstring, each stitch binding warmth into future garments. The spear is the favoured weapon of the hunt. Long shafts hardened in fire, tipped with stone blades, become extensions of the arm. In practised hands they strike with deadly accuracy. Yet spears are not only thrust, they are also thrown. Some hunters employ atlatls, simple spear throwers that extend leverage, sending projectiles farther and faster. With such tools, distance becomes safety. The camp buzzes with work. Children practice by flinging blunt sticks at snow mounds, laughing when their prey collapses dramatically. Elders sit with younger hunters, guiding their hands on the careful strike of flint, warning them not to waste good stone. Every tool carries weight, time, effort, and the thin line between eating or starving. Not every attempt succeeds. A poorly shaped spear point snaps on first use, or a needle breaks in the middle of a hide seam. Frustration sparks, muttered curses slip out, and someone inevitably jokes, "Well, at least we invented garbage." Laughter eases the sting and the work resumes. Tools are more than weapons, they are memory. A spearhead carried from camp to camp bears the history of hunts sharpened again and again, until it is smaller, thinner, almost gone. A bone scraper polished by countless hides fits perfectly into the hand, the groove of fingers worn into its surface. Each tool is both object and story, linking generations. By firelight the clan admires their finished work. Blades glint, needles gleam shaft, stand ready. They are not iron or steel, not yet, but they are enough to tip the balance of survival. Humans cannot match the lion's claw or the bear's strength, but with stone and bone they create something greater, the ability to shape the world to their will. In the end, it is not muscle that defines the Ice Age. It is the spark of invention, the endless patience of hands striking flint, carving antler, stitching hide. The tools rest quietly, but within them lies the story of humanity's triumph against the cold. The tools lie ready by the fire, but even the finest spear or needle cannot erase the weight of the Ice Age skies. Above the camp, winter clouds stretch heavy and endless, their bellies swollen with snow. Yet when the skies clear, something far more profound appears, an ocean of stars bright and sharp in the frozen air. Night after night the people lift their eyes. Patterns take shape in the glittering dark, a line of 3 stars becomes a hunter's belt, a cluster of points, a herd of animals, the sweeping arc of the Milky Way, a frozen river of light. They tell stories to explain these figures' tales, passed from elder to child, words weaving meaning into the cold silence of space. Here's a historical fact: some of the earliest known cave paintings may depict star constellations, suggesting Ice Age. People tracked the skies as both calendar and myth. The famous Lascaux caves in France, for instance, contain dots near animal figures that some researchers believe represent the Pleiades. And here's a quirky tidbit: one carved piece of mammoth ivory over 30,000 years old may show Orion's belt. Imagine a hunter whittling by firelight, then proudly declaring, "Behold the world's first astronomy homework." The stars are more than decoration. They guide movement across the plains, marking seasons and migrations. The rising of certain constellations hints when reindeer herds will return, or when rivers will thaw. The moon, bright and full, lights the way for night hunts, its shifting phases charted with notches carved into bone. Children press close as elders point upward, tracing lines in the air. That cluster an old voice murmurs is the mother who guards us. The young imagine her vast and watchful, her eyes shining from the heavens. Myths grow like sparks from the fire, warming hearts as much as the flames. Around the camp, laughter occasionally interrupts the solemn sky gazing. Someone insists a crooked line of stars looks like a mammoth's behind. Another claims the moon is clearly a giant round of cheese, sparking playful debates, until children giggle themselves to sleep. But beneath the humour is awe. In a world where survival is fragile, the sky offers permanence. The mammoths may vanish, storms may bury valleys, rivers may freeze, but the stars remain. They are faithful companions, silent and eternal, whispering that the world is larger than hunger and cold. The clan finds comfort in this nightly ritual. When fears press too close, wolves, howling storms, building bellies empty, the stars remind them that they are part of something vast. Their fire is one spark among countless others, their lives small threads in a fabric woven across time. And so as snow crunches softly beneath sleeping bodies, the heavens blaze above watching. The stars carry human dreams, hopes and questions across the long winter nights. They become the first scriptures written not on stone or hide, but on the dark canvas of the sky. The stars watch silently, but beneath them the earth itself shifts and trembles. In the Ice Age, the world is never still. Glaciers creep forward like slow-moving mountains, grinding stone into dust. Rivers carve new paths as ice dams break, sending torrents crashing across the land. The people live not only against beasts and hunger, but against the restless moods of the planet itself. A sudden cracking in the night startles the camp. The sound rolls across the valley, deep and thunderous like the growl of some giant hidden beneath the ice. Hunters glance at one another, gripping their spears, but no animal emerges. Instead, they realize a slab of glacier has broken away, collapsing into the river below. The air hums with the echo of its fall long after the water stills. Here's a historical fact: during the last ice age, massive floods known as glacial outbursts reshaped entire landscapes. When ice dams broke, they unleashed torrents that carved valleys and scattered boulders the size of houses. Some scientists believe events like these created the scablands of modern Washington state. And here's a quirky tidbit: some boulders from those ancient floods were carried hundreds of miles before being dropped in strange places. Imagine stumbling across a massive stone in the middle of a flat plain and deciding clearly giants left it here to trip us. For Ice Age humans, such events were terrifying but also awe-inspiring. They spoke of the land itself as alive, angry spirits moving mountains, rivers roaring in protest, the earth quaking beneath their feet. Myths grew to explain the thunder of ice tales of sky gods striking the frozen world, or monsters trapped beneath glaciers pounding to escape. Even without words for geology, the people adapt. Camps are placed on higher ground away from floodplains. Shelters are built against ridges that offer some protection from avalanches. Scouts learn to read the signs, cracks spreading across a frozen slope, the groan of shifting ice, the sudden silence before collapse. Around the fire, stories of these natural dramas mingle with laughter. One elder swears he saw a river rise overnight and carry away a rival's cache of smoked meat, declaring it the river's appetite. Another jokes that mammoths must be moving glaciers at night, pushing them like stubborn cattle. The children howl with giggles, though they tuck the warnings away behind their smiles. The shifting earth teaches resilience. Each disaster leaves behind new terrain to explore fresh valleys, where herds graze rivers teeming with fish caves exposed that offer shelter and mystery. Danger reshapes opportunity, and the people follow, adjusting as nimbly as the rivers change course. Above all, they endure. The world may roar and tremble, but still fires are lit, shelters raised, tools sharpened. Survival is not only defiance against beasts or cold, it is the patient, stubborn dance with a living earth, a willingness to bend and rise with every quake and flood. The earth heaves and glaciers grind, but within the camp another kind of shaping unfolds, one not of stone or ice, but of minds. Human creativity begins to stretch beyond the necessities of spears and shelters. In quiet moments between hunts and storms, hands carve not just tools, but symbols, figures and marks whose meanings run deeper than survival. On a flat piece of bone, a hunter scratches lines with a flint flake. At first it seems like tally marks, perhaps recording days or hunts. But the pattern is deliberate, rhythmic, something more than simple counting. Another clan member carves a small figure from ivory, a woman with exaggerated curves, her body abstract yet powerful. This Venus figurine is passed hand to hand, admired with reverence and a touch of awe. Here's a historical fact: Ice Age figurines like the Venus of Willendorf, dating back over 25,000 years, are among the oldest known representations of the human form. Scholars debate whether they symbolized fertility, survival, or even shared myths, but their presence reveals the beginnings of symbolic thought. And here's a quirky tidbit: one carved mammoth ivory lion figurine found in Germany combines human and animal features, a lion-headed man. Was it a spirit, a shaman's dream, or simply the world's first attempt at superhero fan art? Whatever the case, it shows imagination leaping beyond the immediate. In the camp, art is not confined to objects. Charcoal from the fire becomes paint on stone, simple lines marking shelter walls. Spirals, dots, animals drawn in motion, the beginnings of stories told in strokes instead of words. Children smear hands with pigment, pressing prints on hides, with pride giggling at the mess. Elders nod knowingly, recognizing that even play carries memory. Music stirs too. A hollow bird bone pierced with holes becomes a flute. Its first notes a clumsy, more shrill whistle than melody, and everyone laughs. But slowly patterns emerge, haunting tunes that float into the frozen air. Rhythms join in hands, slapping hide drums, sticks striking bone. Around the fire, the clan finds themselves swaying, voices lifting in song. These creations serve more than entertainment. They bind people together, reminding them they are part of something larger than themselves. Symbols, music, and carvings carry memory across generations. They are the first whispers of culture, fragile threads weaving meaning into the harsh fabric of the Ice Age. And always humour keeps its place. Someone jokes that the flute's squeak summoned wolves, prompting the player to blow even louder. Another teases that a lopsided figurine looks more like a fat rabbit than a woman. Laughter ripples through the camp, the sound mingling with song warmth rising against the cold night. These sparks of creativity will echo far beyond this frozen age. The hands that carve paint and play are laying the groundwork for future worlds of myth, art, and memory. In the flicker of firelight on ivory and bone, in the hum of song beneath the stars, the first chapters of human imagination are written. The zongs drift into silence, the carvings rest in the firelight, and the clan continues its endless rhythm of survival. Yet survival does not belong to humans alone. Around them, animals adapt just as fiercely to the Ice Age world, each species honing skills to endure the cold. Some are prey, others predator, but all are fellow travellers through the frozen age. Herds of reindeer move like rivers of muscle, and antler noses press to snow as they sniff for hidden moss. Woolly rhinoceroses plod through drifts, their massive horns, sweeping aside ice crusts in search of grass. Musk oxen huddle tightly, their thick coats layered against the chill, a living wall of fur. Even small creatures like Arctic hares shift their coats from brown to white, blending perfectly into the snowscape. Here's a historical fact: many Ice Age animals still live today, though smaller or less widespread. Reindeer, musk, oxen and bison all walked beside mammoths and lions. Their Ice Age ancestors often grew larger, a phenomenon scientists call Bergmann's rule, where animals in colder climates evolve bulkier bodies to conserve heat. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some cave paintings show woolly rhinoceroses not just in outline but covered in little lines interpreted as tufts of hair. It seems Ice Age artists were so precise that they even included bad hair days for rhinos. Imagine explaining, "No, really I swear it looked like a giant shag carpet on legs." Humans watch these animals closely, studying their strategies. They learn that reindeer scrape snow with hooves to uncover food, teaching people where edible plants might hide. They observe musk oxen forming defensive circles, inspiring hunting tactics that drive herds into confusion. Even predators become lessons wolves' patience in stalking lions' sudden bursts of speed. Some animals become allies. Early domestication begins quietly with wolves. Drawn to camps by scraps, the bolder ones linger at the edges, tolerated by humans who notice their keen senses. Over time, mutual benefit grows. Wolves bark at danger, humans share food. The first faint thread of partnership stretches across the firelight, a bond that will echo into the future as dogs. Around the fire, hunters tell tales of animals as teachers and spirits. The mammoth is revered for its strength, the wolf admired for its cunning, the hare teased for its swiftness. Children laugh when someone mimics a hare darting and stumbling, while others gasp at stories of lions with glowing eyes that guard the boundaries of the night. Humour softens the fear. One man swears that a muskox sneezed so loudly it scared off wolves. Another claims the reindeer laugh at clumsy hunters, their snorts carried on the wind. The children howl with giggles, and even the sternest elder cracks a smile. But beneath the laughter is reverence. Every creature is a survivor carrying knowledge of the cold. To watch them is to glimpse strategies older than memory. To hunt them is to borrow their strength. In this frozen world, humans and animals alike are bound by the same struggle to endure, to adapt, to live. The animals endure, the humans adapt, and still the cold presses on. It is not only storms and predators that shape life in the Ice Age, but the long, grinding burden of climate itself. Winters stretch for months, snow swallowing the land, while summers bring brief thaws that barely soften the earth before frost returns. Seasons are not gentle turns of a wheel, they are jolts, sudden shifts that demand resilience. The hunters sense these rhythms in their bones. They know when the sun lingers a little longer, when shadows shorten, when snow crust cracks, sooner beneath their feet. They mark these changes with notches carved into antler, recording the waxing and waning of light. Some even carry these marked bones like calendars, reminders of when herds might return or rivers thaw. Here's a historical fact: archaeologists have found Ice Age bones etched with sequences of lines believed by many to be lunar calendars tracking the moon's cycle. If true, these are some of humanity's earliest scientific records, prehistoric planners for the uncertain year. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some markings suggest people may have predicted animal migrations based on the moon. Imagine a hunter saying full moon tonight, time to chase reindeer, while someone else mutters, or maybe it's just an excuse for a party. Seasons change with violence as well as subtlety. A sudden thaw sends rivers roaring, melting ice cracking like thunder. Then without warning, frost snaps back freezing water, solid again, trapping fish beneath clear surfaces, where hungry children press noses to the ice. Summers bring swarms of insects, thick clouds that rise from bogs, driving both animals and humans to seek breezes on higher ground. Yet within this harsh cycle, opportunities bloom. Summer thaws reveal berries and roots, brief bursts of colour against the grey-green tundra. Rivers swell with fish flashing silver as they leap. For a few short weeks, the land offers a taste of plenty, and the clan moves quickly to gather smoke and store. Then, as if jealous of its generosity, winter slams shut again, erasing the green beneath blankets of white. Humans adjust not just through tools, but through rhythm. They move camps with the herds, time hunts with migrations, prepare caches before storms. Stories passed across generations serve as maps. When the sun sits low behind that ridge, the rivers will rise. When the stars gather in a cluster, the herds will return. Memory becomes a compass, guiding them through the unpredictable flow of years. Even in hardship, humour finds space. One elder claims to be able to predict weather by how loudly his joints creak, drawing chuckles from the hunters. Another insists the mosquitoes of summer are actually tiny spirits punishing people for complaining about the cold. The children giggle, swatting at the air, while the adults nod secretly, agreeing that perhaps the spirits do bite too hard. The seasons grind onward, relentless yet familiar. The clan bends with them, weaving human time into Earth's deeper rhythm. In the endless turning of frost and thaw, survival becomes less about resisting change, and more about flowing with it like rivers under ice. The seasons grind on, yet survival is not only a matter of food or shelter, it is a matter of spirit. In the cold silence of the Ice Age, humans carry stories and rituals to bind them together, to explain the mysteries of a world too vast and violent to face alone. Around the fire, myth becomes as essential as meat belief, as nourishing as marrow. An elder raises a hand and the children hush. Flames dance on his face as he begins a story. He speaks of a giant mammoth in the sky whose footsteps shake the earth and whose tusks hold up the stars. When storms rage, it is the mammoth shaking snow from its back. When rivers swell, it is its heavy feet pressing into the ground. The children listen wide-eyed, picturing the great beast beyond the clouds, and feel less afraid of the roaring storm outside. Here's a historical fact. Evidence from Ice Age burials and cave paintings suggests ritual practices were widespread. Red ochre sprinkled on bodies, figurines buried with the dead, and painted chambers deep underground hint at beliefs in spirits, ancestors, and an afterlife. And here's a quirky tidbit. In some caves, footprints of children have been found, alongside torch smudges and painted walls suggesting kids were part of ceremonies. Imagine a solemn ritual disrupted by a child running circles and giggling, leaving little toe prints for archaeologists to puzzle over thousands of years later. Rituals emerge in many forms. Hunters leave offerings of meat or bone for the spirits of animals they've slain, whispering thanks before carrying carcasses home. Women wear pendants carved from ivory, or teeth charms believed to protect fertility and health. Fire itself becomes sacred embers carried carefully from camp to camp, as if carrying the breath of life. Songs accompany rituals, low chants rising like the heartbeat of the clan. Sometimes they echo in caves where voices blend with stone magnified into something unearthly. In those echoing chambers, hunters see painted bison leap across the walls by firelight shadows, making them move as if alive. The line between real and spirit blurs, and always there is room for humour, even in reverence. One hunter jokes that the spirits must prefer smoked meat to raw, since caches are often raided by animals. Another laughs that his carved pendant brings him luck, though he still misses every throw. The children giggle, and even the spirits one imagines must smile. Rituals serve more than belief, they strengthen bonds. They remind the clan that they are not alone, that they belong to something greater, whether spirit stars or the memory of ancestors. In a world where storms and predators loom, that sense of belonging is as vital as any weapon. The fire crackles, the story winds down, and the listeners lean close, warmed not just by flame but by shared faith. In their chants, their carvings, their whispered thanks to unseen forces, they carve out a meaning deeper than mere survival. They carve out humanity itself. The fire burns low, shadows stretch long, and the Ice Age people continue their journey through winters uncounted. Yet their endurance is not endless. Slowly across centuries the ice begins to retreat. Glaciers that once roared like frozen rivers shrink back into the mountains. Valleys once drowned in white open into green plains. Rivers run freer, forests creep forward, and animals shift their paths in response. For the people, change arrives as both gift and challenge. Warmer summers bring new plants, fruits and animals, but they also bring instability. Herds wander differently. Old hunting grounds vanish under rising forests, and floods carve new channels through familiar land. The humans who have weathered endless winters must now adapt again, not to harsher cold, but to its slow surrender. Here's a historical fact. The Ice Age ended about 11,700 years ago, beginning the Holocene epoch. As glaciers melted, sea levels rose dramatically, reshaping coastlines and forcing human groups to move inland or higher. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some of those retreating glaciers left behind enormous lakes. One glacial lake, Agassiz, in North America, was bigger than all of today's Great Lakes combined. Imagine paddling a tiny log raft across that. It would feel less like fishing, more like being a breadcrumb on soup. The clan notices the signs. Mammoths, once the pillars of their world, dwindle year by year, vanishing into memory and myth. Reindeer wander farther north, chased by the cold they need. New animals appear in forests, wild boar rooting in thickets, red deer with antlers like spreading trees. Slowly humans shift their strategies, trading long pursuits across tundra for closer foraging, fishing, and planting the first seeds of settled life. But for now, in this moment of narration, the Ice Age still holds them. They are hunters and gatherers, storytellers and singers, children pressing handprints on stone elders, whispering myths into the night. Their fires burn against the dark, their songs rise beneath the stars, their laughter sparks in the cold. They are fragile yet fierce, mortal, yet enduring, a testament to the will to live. And as their world begins to soften, as ice gives way to green, their legacy remains. Tools, art, rituals, laughter, and survival. They carry these gifts forward into the ages to come, into the dawn of villages, cities, and civilizations. The Ice Age ends, but humanity's story is only beginning. And now, as the fire dwindles to embers, let us slow our steps. The storm outside has passed, the winds no longer howl, and the snow drifts in silence. Imagine the camp quiet at last. Hunters sleep, children curl against their mothers, and the elders' voices fade into gentle breathing. Above the stars keep watch steady and eternal. The mammoths and lions, the wolves and reindeer, they drift away into dreams. The sound of flutes carved from bone lingers softly in the air, a lullaby from thousands of years ago. The painted walls of caves glow faintly in your mind, figures of bison and horses leaping in the flicker of firelight. Everything slows, everything softens. You walk away from the Ice Age gently step by step as if treading snow that melts into quiet earth. The harsh winds ease into calm air, the frozen rivers flow smoothly again, and the weight of endless winters lifts from your shoulders. The people you have followed rest now, their fires glowing faint but steady, their spirits carried forward through time. Breathe deeply, let the cold air fade into warmth, let the endless nights of the Ice Age fold into calm darkness, safe and still. The story of survival continues in you, but for now the story is at peace. Close your eyes, rest in the quiet. The stars remain above, the earth remains below, and the long journey of humanity cradles you gently, carrying you into sleep.